everyone, and welcome back to the Barely Bookish podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about the Interview with the Vampire movie, which came out in the 90s, I think. I
Early
forgot what year.
90s.
Early 90s.
I feel like it's between 92 and 94.
92 sticks in my head, but I don't know for sure. But I'm joined by Candace again.
94.
94? Okay.
Yes, 1994. Hello.
Hello. Yeah. What a movie,
Yeah,
first of all.
yeah.
I
Now that I'm an adult, I can see why my mom was really cheesed off that I tricked her into letting me watch it because I read the book.
Mhm. My favorite thing about this movie is like how weirdly, like, I forget that like the 90s they don't want to have gay characters, and how weirdly they try to go around.
So there's a lot of that in this movie, right? Like it's the gay stuff, right? Where like there's like a bunch of really super obviously gay moments. There's a bunch of super obviously gay lines, but they're presented like in a really roundabout way. And every time Lestat is like, "I'm hungry for someone," and he always starts with a lady, a young lady, or a
Mm-hmm.
man. It's fine. Men are also fine, I guess. Like that's not how it is in the book. In the book, it's I want a sexy dude. And then I think too, like the slavery element of it in the beginning
Oh
as
my
well,
god. Yeah.
right? Like I feel like they kind of did this thing where I don't know, like they give you Louis is a slave owner, right? But that's because everybody at that time was a slave owner, right? They kind of passively kind of give that to you in the story.
Mhm.
And then like his slaves really like him. So like they're really nice to him and stuff, which like in the book his slaves do worry about him, right? Because they're like, "What are we
Yeah.
doing? Hello, like or can we go?" You know what I mean? Kind of thing.
Mhm.
But I feel like in an attempt to soften how Louis feels, like in an attempt to soften his overall demeanor and his overall person, because obviously being a slave owner is not the look. In the 90s, they were like, "We can't have that. We can't have an honest discussion about the fact that this dude had slaves." So
Yeah.
instead, what we're going to do is we are going to kind of gloss over the fact that he has slaves. We're going to present the slaves as their own kind of like entity and other the fuck out of them, right? And also give you a really beautiful light skinned slave that serves him that like isn't in the book. And she's gonna be like overly caring to the point where it seems passively
Flirty.
romantic and flirty,
Yeah.
and it's creepy and weird. Um, Especially because you have that really powerful scene in the book where like Lestat kills that one enslaved man and his wife is like, "I know what you guys are," right? She's
Mhm.
confrontational. She's like, "I know what you are." Like I like the agency that the book gives the enslaved people on Louis' plantation, because they're never fooled, right?
Mhm.
Everybody else, like all these white people are like, "Vampires where?" The black people are like, "Right fucking there. I'm looking at it. Right there. I'm pointing at your face.
Literally.
This one is a vampire," right? Like they know. They know right away. And I think they did a better job being inclusive in the book in a strange way, even though like there's still some shit that's like not all right that happens. Um, yeah, it's weird. Like it's kind of
It's
weird.
really weird.
It feels weird. Nice cameo though for anybody who is gonna watch this. There's a nice cameo by Tandy Newton as Yvette. When she was a wee lass, she's best known for being Missy's hormone monster on Big Mouth. She is the
That
lead
makes sense.
in
I was like,
she's the
why is
lead
her
in Westworld
voice?
too.
Oh.
Yeah, if you've
Oh.
seen
So I'm
Westworld,
like looking
that's
at this lady, and I'm
you're
like,
like, "Why do I know her?"
I know that, and like Lestat looked very familiar as well. And I'm like, I don't know if I
Mhm.
actually know you, but you look very familiar to
Oh,
me.
you know him.
Who
You
who
know
is
him.
he?
That's Tom Cruise.
What?
Oh, yeah, homie.
Blonde
It's
wig on Tom Cruise is
it
the
is
most.
it's bizarre, but it's honestly probably his best role acting in his
Yeah.
entire career. I don't think
Oh
I've
my
ever
god.
seen that man not be Tom Cruise in any movie ever, and he's still Tom Cruise in this movie sometimes. He gets a little
So
Tom
good.
Cruisey at some points, but he's great in this movie. I
Yeah.
genuinely believe that both actors, both Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise, as far as pure acting prowess, not the quality of the movie, not the
Mhm.
quality of the character, right? How much you like the character, but how well they act. I think Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise, this is honestly both of their best movies,
Correct.
in my opinion. Like, they knock it out of the
Correct.
fucking park. Like, Tom Cruise is almost unrecognizable. I'd say the only
Truly.
movie he is more unrecognizable in is Tropic Thunder, when he's in that chunky suit and he
Mhm.
has like the bald head and stuff. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
Tom Cruise. And he does a
Shocking.
fantastic job. He's a great Lestat. Anne Rice handpicked him to be Lestat. Like, a bunch of people came in for the role, tried out, and she was like, everyone can go home. It's this one. The whole screenplay was written by Anne Rice, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that in like the opening credits, but like, she
Yeah.
wrote the screenplay and was very, very much involved in the making of this.
Mhm.
I am making sure that I call this out because I know that we were considering watching Queen of the Damned at some point, and you need to be aware that she was not involved in that at all, and it
Yeah.
shows.
Oh god. I do wanna mention that I like Lestat in this movie
Yeah.
drastically more,
Oh yeah.
because I think it's funny watching Louis just be like, "Oh my god, my life is so hard, I suffer so much," and Lestat's like, "Bruh, if you don't pick yourself up and enjoy the fact that there are no consequences to any of our actions, I'm literally gonna leave you in the dirt."
Yeah. He's way less whiny. Like, Lestat is way
Mhm.
less whiny. He's less demanding. The
Mhm.
relationship, because especially because they cut out the whole thing with the brother, right? With
Mhm.
Louis' brother. Like, it's so funny. Like, I feel like she has um put so much kind of care into removing things that like aren't necessary, right? Rice has done like a lot
Yeah.
of work to like take a lot out to like cut it down so that it's not forever long. So I feel like the whole relationship with like Louis' brother and his sister and the neighbor and whatever,
Mhm.
right? Like, it's I feel like what this movie kind of did unintentionally was like
Mhm.
undercut the book a little bit, because I'm watching the movie and I'm like, this is perfectly fine. I did not need all of that in part one with all of those people. Like, it
Yeah.
didn't matter. It didn't need to happen. Like, it was all inconsequential. Like,
Mhm.
I'm really racking my brain. All it really does is set up why Louis detests Lestat so much, right? All it does
Mhm.
is show like what a shithead Lestat is, which I understand, right? You have to establish that so that you can understand the rest of it. But I feel like she just goes on and on and on. There's so much of part one that like did not need to be a thing, and her own writing shows that in the screenplay for this movie.
Mhm. I know.
Unfortunately, yeah, like, didn't miss any of that.
I love this version of Lestat. Like, I
Yes.
would have loved him so much more as a character
Oh
without him
yeah.
having his whiny dad and all of the stuff happening with
Yes.
Babette. And, like, I
Hmm.
know they tried to be like, "See, Lestat's terrible, okay? Like, look at him. He, like, drinks random people's blood." And I'm like, "Okay,
Also is vampire though, so
yeah." You know?
kind of the
And
job.
I know they were trying to show off the fact that he still just, like, picks off one person from a family, but, like, they didn't do a good enough job for me to be like, "But, main man Louis just ate all of the chickens, which was the meals for every single person on this farm, so now they're gonna
Hmm.
starve." Like, I'm
Yeah.
not sure that's better.
It's not. It's not better. This is what I'm saying though. Like, I feel like, I mean, even when Lestat comes and like crashes through the window to save him because Louis like sets the whole house on fire or whatever. Like,
Mhm,
Lestat comes crashing through the window to get him and everything. He's like, ah, look what you've done. Our house. How could you have done this to our home? I'm like, you are justified in your upsetness.
mhm,
I don't mind that it's getting burnt to the ground because it's a plantation and now all those people are free, so it's really inconsequential to me. But on a scale of
mhm.
1 to 10 of fucked upness, yeah, this is pretty serious. I'd be mad if I came home and my boyfriend fucking set fire to our whole apartment because he was
Yeah,
mad that, he has to fucking,
be
do
a
his job.
vampire.
Right? Do his fucking job as a vampire. I get it. I
Mhm,
totally understand. And I think too, like, something else that was ridiculous to me, just to like circle back to this moment. So the whole transformation scene, like, Lestat is so, there is a princeliness to him in this, and there
mhm,
is a joviality to him in this that he does not possess as much in the book, right? I mean, in
mhm,
later books he does. In later books he loosens up a little bit, but in this first book, because it's more like, obviously this is a version, this is a picture of Lestat told through Louis's eyes, right? It's not who Lestat actually is, it's who he is perceived by Louis, right, to be.
mhm,
um, but like the scene in the beginning when he like grabs Louis, he saves Louis from that guy that was gonna like murder him, right? That was like
mhm.
following him with that sex worker that he was with, and then
Yeah.
dumps him into the water after he's done feeding on him, just like throws him into the water, like, fuck this guy. And then like comes back to Louis's house and is all beautiful. Like, listen, if I woke up in the middle of the night and there was a beautiful blonde ghost in my room, I'd be like, what do you want and what do you need and how can I help you? Right? Like, I wouldn't be like, get out, you evil thing. I'd be like, what are you doing? How are you doing?
Oh my
Oh,
god.
you're
Hey.
really handsome. Your eyes are so blue. Like, so I feel like with like this version of Lestat, like, I don't know, it makes so much more sense. And then when he transforms Louis, like, I do feel there are some nice Easter eggs for people who read the book. Like, for
Mm,
example, when Lestat transforms Louis in the graveyard, right? Like, that's a
mhm,
nod to the crypt. Like, they even show like the crypt where the angel is, and he can see the angel opening her eyes and all that stuff, right? Like, all of that happens in the book, just in a different context, right? That's definitely
mhm,
his brother's like mausoleum or whatever, the little like religious space he built for his brother.
mhm.
So there's like all these like little dips that you get. Same thing with when Louis is burning the house down and he sets fire to that portrait of a beautiful dark-haired woman. I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be his sister. You know what I mean? So like, I think there are like little bits and pieces for people who understand that there's a deeper story being told. But I think the standout line for me in all of this, and it's never failed to make me laugh. The first time I heard it when I was like in 5th grade, all the way to now, every time I hear this, I'm just like, what the fuck does that mean? Why do you deliver this line like this? Now look with your vampire eyes. Like, it's so ridiculous. I don't know why it makes me laugh. It's so
Mhm,
stupid. Like, look with your vampire eyes. Look out with them. Look out
mhm.
with them in the world. Like, it's like this, it's supposed to be like mystical and it's supposed to be
Yeah.
like really beautiful and magical and everything. Like, but in my mind, I'm just like, I see like a contact lens case that says vampire eyes on it. You just like
Mhm.
pick it up and stick it in your face, like, I don't
Are
know
you
why
remembering that
it's
commercial? The look with your special eyes, and it's the contact commercial.
That's exactly what it's like.
Yeah.
It's just so awkward. Like, it's just weird. You know what I
Mhm,
mean? And like,
mhm.
I feel bad because I know it's not supposed to be funny. I know it's not, but it is. With your
One of my
vampire eyes, capital V, capital E.
mhm, mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Trademark.
Yeah.
One of my notes too that I had is Brad Pitt looking very veiny and he needs a haircut. And then we
Listen,
find out they can't get a haircut.
no, they cannot. You have to look like that the rest of your life.
He needs a man bun then. Like, it's so simple because doing that little pulled back ponytail not working for anybody.
No, it's very colonial. It's got that like
Yeah.
Alexander Hamilton look without the pompadour in the
Mm,
front. Um,
mhm, mhm.
I think
I
that
saw
mhm.
sorry, I
No, it's all right.
speaking of pompadour, I saw a woman with those little bumps in the front, like as if it was 2004,
Uh-huh.
like out and about yesterday or on
Listen,
Wednesday, and I was like, "Ma'am."
I I still rock a pompadour. I will not be talked shit about. Okay? I still rock it sometimes. I'll have you know. It is a classic rockabilly look. Sometimes you have to look like that. It feels good. I highly suggest you try a tiny pompadour. I
This
highly
was
suggest
not
it.
a tiny one. This was like 3 inches, just bangs, and then the rest of it was down, as if it was 2005.
Oh, wait, it wasn't like in a ponytail?
No.
Okay, well that's a problem.
Yes.
That's an
Because
issue.
I've seen
If you're
yours.
rocking a ponytail with a pompadour, that's
Uh
a
huh.
nice look, right? That's cute. If you've
Mm
got a pompadour and the rest of your hair is up, that's a good look.
hmm. Mm
But
hmm.
pompadour with like, I mean, you might as well be wearing Birkenstocks with toe socks underneath.
Mm hmm. Mm hmm.
It's not
Yep.
good.
Correct.
All right,
That's what
all
I'm
right.
saying here.
Fair, fair point, Rachel. Fair point. Okay, we can take it back. We can rewind it. Fine.
Like, bring
I'm
out the
not
silly
offended.
bands at this point. You know what I mean?
Listen, everything comes back around. You're going to be so mad. In 10 years, you're going to be going to Target and there's going to be all kinds of shit from when you were a teenager and you're going to be like, why is this happening to me? It's happening to me right now. I walked into Target and I was like, oh, great. I'm so glad that we've got like these super ultra gigantic flares that are too skinny everywhere except the bottom. I'm so happy
Mhm.
for this again. My thick thighs. I loved this as a child and now I'm an adult who has even thicker thighs. Living my best life wearing skinny jeans still. I will not be shamed, Gen Z.
I saw a woman on Facebook not realize that things come back around, and she said something about um like it was a photo of something. I don't remember what the main photo was, but in her comments she goes, "And I have all these records that'll never be played again because who owns a record player?"
Oh,
And I was
honey.
like, I hate to
Records.
break it to you.
This is the first year in like 40 years that record sales outsold CDs. It's like the first
Hmm.
time in like 30 something 40 years
Hmm.
that record sales have been this high. Like they are soaring.
Hmm.
Oh no, darling.
My mother-in-law brought out her records when we went over for dinner the other day, and she was like, "Yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do with these. I don't know how I'm going to play them." And I was like, "Should we just go buy her a record player? Because they're
Yes.
like $50."
A Crossley turntable is a compact record player. It's like $100. I bought my
Yeah,
mom one so she could play all her records. She
yeah,
was like, this is too much, Candy. This is too much." I'm like, no, no, no. It's great. Try it.
yeah.
And now she listens to it all the time. I have an old setup. I actually got my record player from the trash outside an old person's house. There
Nice.
was this 55 and up community, and this lady was like moving in with her family. I guess like I saw them helping her pack up,
Hmm.
and they put like all her stuff out on the curb. And I was going to work, and I was like, record player. Oh, so I went and I grabbed it, and I like left it in like a plastic bag in my car for like 2 weeks to make sure that if there were any bugs or anything inside of it, like it did just come out of her apartment, so I figured it was probably fine. But
Hmm.
I like left it in a plastic bag for 2 weeks, and then the only thing it needed was a new needle, and the new needle was like $20. Like it didn't need like any work
Nice.
on it. Like I really lucked out. But yeah, I don't listen. If your mother in law needs something to do with her records and doesn't want to play them, you let me know what she's got in her catalog, and we can work something out.
Dolly Parton and Willie
What?
Nelson. I know those for
Okay,
sure.
Dolly Parton, hell yeah. Okay,
Yeah, right.
Dolly Parton is an always yes.
I know. I was like, those, they're saying, like, we got to keep this. You know, you
Hmm.
can't just get rid of them
Do not
because,
let her get rid of them. And honestly, even if she wants to get rid of them, I would sell them at this point. Like people want that.
yeah,
They're
that's what
looking
I'm
for it.
saying.
Hmm.
Like, and she's got probably like 50 of
Oh my
them.
goodness.
Anyways, Brad Pitt.
Yeah, so neither one of these dudes can hold a mid-Atlantic accent or a
I
fucking
know.
English accent or a French accent or any accent whatsoever. Everybody in this movie is American as fuck. They're all like,
Hmm.
"What are we going to do now?" I'm like, "Guys, you could at least pretend you're old." Um that being said, again, surprisingly good performances from all
I
involved,
know.
right? Like
I'm not
s-
mad.
something that I really like too is the hook that Anne Rice invents, and I feel like this doesn't really get said in the book. It's more like inferred or implied in the book. But Lestat's "I'm going to give you the choice I never had."
Hmm.
I'm like, that's a pretty good line because you've got to have like your villain has to have some kind of hook. You know what I mean? They've got to have
Yeah.
like a thing that they either say or do that shows them as being set apart from just a regular bad guy, right? And I feel
Mm.
like for Lestat, that's how he sets it up because it's like a really inviting line. He wants more for you than he wants for himself, even though it's not true. He just wants you to like
Yeah.
join him in his tricks and his capers. Um, and I also really like the foreshadowing that he does too. Like there's a scene when they're in before Louis burns the house. Lestat is talking about he's trying to get Louis to bite Yvette. He's like, "Go for her. Like, just take her." And Louis is
Hmm.
like, "No, I'm not going to do that to her. Like, she works for me. Like, I care about these people. Like, I'm not going to do that." And Lestat like grabs like a rat scurrying across the table, and I'm like, "There were just rats on your table back then? Fuck." So
Yes,
he just like
so.
grabs the rat and like squeezes it into a glass. He's like, "Don't waste this fine crystal." Like, still trying to be bougie with like the rat blood, and he legit says, "This is really good if you're ever stuck on a ship
Hmm.
for a long extended period of time." And in my head I went, that son of a bitch. Right?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
I really think Anne Rice like went above and beyond giving Easter eggs to people who read the book because like that things happen very differently in this story. It's not the exact same as the book. Things get
Hmm.
even more different as we move on. But I just like that she like still gives nods to, "Don't worry, I see you. Thanks for reading my book, pal." You know?
Hmm. Yeah, I like, this is an adaptation that I'm okay with. Like,
Yeah.
things were removed, and the only thing I don't like is that we made Lestat and Louis straight for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's the
Far straighter
90s,
than they should be.
so I allow it. You know, it's fine, I guess. But it is kind of funny because they're like, there's all these different scenes where you're like, yeah, Armand and Louis just homies hanging out
Yep.
being bros.
friends, BFF. I also think this version of Lestat, like he gives Louis more information, like he's more willing to talk to
Mhm.
Louis about stuff than Book Lestat, but
Mhm.
somehow still teaches him absolutely nothing. Is still just as useless as he is in the book.
Yep.
Like he's like, read her thoughts. Louis like, what are you talking about? He's like, that that rich woman over there, read her thoughts. What's she thinking? What's she saying? Louis like, I don't fucking know. Lestat's like, you can't read. Oh, well. Everybody has their gifts. I'm like, when is Louis getting his gift, or is his gift bitching?
It is
I
bitching.
think bitching is Louis' gift. He bitches so good that other vampires can't help but go, "Oh my god, all right." You know what I mean? Like, I'll do it. I'll do it. Whatever you want. Sheesh.
Please just make the suffering end.
Yo, like, and especially with how gay the movie still manages to be. Like that whole
Mhm.
scene where they seduce the old woman and her like fop, like her dapper man, and like the two dogs are there. She
Mhm.
has like those poodles or whatever. Like that scene also makes me laugh. So the young man, they like do a close up of his face and his like blushing cheeks and his like full pouty lips, and he's like
Mhm.
beautiful. This actor, like
Mhm.
whoever he is, I don't think he goes on to do anything, but he is absolutely gorgeous. And like
Mhm.
when I was a kid, I used to be like, so beautiful. Such foreshadowing in this movie that I was going to be a big old queer. And there's like that scene where like Louis is trying to like bite this old lady's neck, and like her wig is like all in his face, and he's like like spitting out her hair and stuff. I'm like, this is unintentionally hilarious. I am dying right now. And then
Yeah.
he like just like tosses her aside and eats her dogs instead. She's like screaming, "My babies, my babies!" I'm like, this is so camp. This is so
Yeah.
camp. Like this is a very, very, very queer movie. I don't understand why
Mhm.
you guys are fighting it. Just lean in. Steer into the skid, guys. Steer in.
Mhm.
It's okay. This is going to age
Oh.
super well if it's gay now. Trust me, right?
Mhm.
Like such a tender heart. I can't like
It's so funny though. Like it's just so funny. And I just I love the different ways they're trying to get around them being gay, like by
mhm.
making it like slightly more weird.
Yep. Yep, just more awkward.
Yeah.
Like they're in fucking that scene with like the two prostitutes, and Lestat is just like, I don't even need a hand with these two ladies. I've got it. But Louis, also come over here and help me. Louis is so disgusted. Like I
Mhm.
love the like tension in every scene between Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise. Like Brad Pitt's constantly looking at Tom Cruise like, ugh, I fucking hate you. And Lestat's like, what? What? Like that's their relationship in a nutshell. Lestat does something. Huh? Louis goes, ah, fuck, you're terrible. And Lestat's like, what? I'm trying to impress you. Will you not be
Yep.
entertained by me? I'm really trying. I'm really trying. I feel like you don't appreciate anything I do. And Louis like, you're right. I don't. And I think it speaks volumes about both of these men that they could be in a shit-tastic sewer and both look so hot still. Louis is like
Mhm.
rolling around in poop water, and you're like, I'd still kiss him. I'd French him a little bit. I would. Yeah. He's pretty. I
Like
get why
even with
Lestat
greasy
keeps coming
hair.
back. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, all right, that's fine.
I'm
Like
still down.
he's trying to look really drab and like in the sewer. All his hair is straight. He's like hunched over, and
Yep.
Lestat like walking in like a proper fancy boy, and
Yep.
he's like, why are we in the sewer again? Like, can we not be in the sewer? And
Is it
Louis
because
is
you
like,
ate that little
my
girl?
life, it wants to end. I'm suffering.
Lestat's like, why don't you just write some poetry and tighten up like everyone else? Can you just do that, please? Can you write some sonnets and be done? Like, this is so boring right now.
So good. So
Epic,
funny.
epic fucking acting from Kirsten Dunst, though. Watching this movie
Yeah,
now, I look back and I'm like, yo, that little girl was robbed of an Oscar. Like, she
truly.
was spectacular in that movie. Like, a marvel,
Watching
really.
the intelligence in her eyes, even like her
Yes.
eye work
Yep.
changing, like with the bright eyed, like innocence to,
Mm-hmm.
okay, she's like calculating now. That was
Yes.
amazing to me. Like,
Yes.
what range?
Yes.
Truly.
At such a young age. And that's what I'm saying. Like, it's weird that like Rice chose to make Claudia 5, right? Like George R. R. Martin is in the same fucking boat, right? Game of Thrones, Sansa Stark is like 12 years old or some crazy nonsense, right? Like
Yeah.
these authors make their kids so young, forgetting that like a 5-year-old can barely talk, right? A 5-year-old is like, I want snacks, please. Like a 5-year-old
Hmm.
can't like, you know what I mean? So the idea that you're gonna make this kid so young, like it was unnecessary. Making Claudia 10, 11 like she is in the movie,
Hmm.
just as damaging. right? Just as
Yeah.
damaging, if not more so, because a 5-year-old doesn't have the intellect to know why people are looking at them a certain way, right? She would have had to suffer through that eventuality. Whereas at 11, 12, right, Claudia knows her
Mhm.
body should be changing. She knows what she should be looking like. She knows, like, okay, well, there's a first period that I'm supposed to get. Okay, well, there's, you know what I mean? Like, she understands the world around her on a different level, which I think honestly makes it that much more cruel, because she
Mhm.
literally cannot see herself getting there, even though she knows she's supposed to. You know what I mean? Like, that knowledge, that little bit of knowledge, but without the agency. That whole age, really, 8 to, like, I'd say like 13, 14 in your life as a person, especially as a young woman, where you are conscious of a lot of things, right? You're slowly kind of, trading your innocence in for reality, right? Little by little, you're being fed like little bits of the truth. You're seeing, your body change and men treat you differently, or, you know what I mean? Things like that that happen
Mhm.
to you during that time. And for Claudia, she's aware of all of it and can't participate
Mhm.
in any of it, right? And when she finally gets to the moment, like, where she's like, who fucking did this to me? Who
Yeah.
who did this to me? Who do I have to fucking fight? Who am I gutting
Mhm.
like a fucking fish, right? Like,
Mhm.
when she finally gets to that moment, I feel like she's like, it's like she turns off a light switch. Like,
Mhm.
the performance is just so good. It's just so sharp and so clean. Like, just, I mean, honestly, close to perfection. Like, the scene where she, like, practically, like, and when I say seduce, I don't mean in a sexy way. I mean like in a cajoling kind of way. Like,
Mhm.
she cajoles Lestat into, like, thinking she's really trying to apologize, and she giggles,
Mhm.
drunk on brandy wine. Her little, like, bell like
Yeah.
voice. Like, I've never heard such a predator in my life. I've
Mhm.
never heard such a
Mhm.
monster. Like, it is horrifying when she's, like,
Yeah.
screaming about, same thing with this scene, right? Like, instead of having the scene of the mother and daughter that get burnt alive by Claudia
Mhm.
in that oven, instead, we get a scene where she sees this beautiful, shapely, buxom woman showering, and she's like, I'm never going to look like her. Like, what the fuck, right? And she has this, like, breakdown internally. And then we find out she's killed this woman and is keeping her underneath the pile of dolls in her bed. So much more impactful, in my opinion, than the scene that we get in the book, because it's
Yeah.
visceral, right? Like, she's trying to make it hers. She's doing
Mhm.
everything she can to hang on. I feel like it's great foreshadowing for meeting Madeleine, who's a doll maker, right? Like,
Mhm.
I think that she does, like, Anne Rice does such a great job kind of setting that up, like teeing that up for the viewer. Um, and by the time Claudia fucking kills Lestat, like, those scenes are like electric. Like, from the second she slices his face open with those
Oh my
scissors,
god. I
right,
know.
all the way to, like, her slitting his throat as he, like, bleeds out on the ground. Like, and then she just looks at Louis like, what do you think we should do with him? Like, everything's fine. She's, like, holding the
Yeah.
knife, waving it around. What do you think I should go do now? I don't know, just, like, move to Paris or something? Louis is like, what the fuck
Shocking.
is wrong with you?
Yeah.
I love the
It
look of disgust
oh.
on his face.
Mhm. And her disappointment when she looks at
Yes.
his eyes of his, like, being disgusted, and she's
Yep.
like, "Oh, you're not as into this as I am."
I forgot you're one of those vampires.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I do like her screaming and cutting her hair and having a meltdown because she just wants to
Yes.
change
Yes.
and realize, and her hair grows back immediately.
Yep.
That's really good. I loved that.
Yeah, man. Like, it was, I think she's honestly my favorite character.
Yeah.
Um, and specifically the way that Kirsten Dunst plays her,
Mhm.
because she's not, the Claudia in the book feels amoral, right? She feels like she just doesn't get it. She doesn't know what's right. She doesn't know what's wrong. She just does what comes natural.
Mhm.
This version of Claudia knows what's right, knows what's wrong, knows what feels natural is a gray space between those two things, and does what she's expected to do. The scene where
Mhm.
she hunts by herself and there's that man, I know these are too rich for your blood, little girl. You can't afford these. And she has this little smile on her face when the woman who's sewing up the hem on her dress cuts herself and is like, oh no, and she just takes her hand ever so gently and goes, I'll kiss it better. And for a second, you're like, oh, little sweetie. Oh, no. Right? Like,
Mhm.
for a minute, you're like, little baby, until you realize this is a vampire. That's bad.
Yep.
Right? You're like,
Yep.
ah, oh, no. Right? You get really shocked, like, fuck. And then she, like, proceeds to eat that lady. Right?
Mhm.
Like, I love the unpredictability of her character, how changeable she is. She's so much more dynamic than she is in the book. I feel like in the book, they give her, like, one dimension. dimension, 2 dimensions max.
Mhm.
Um, and I feel like she just like really comes alive. And obviously, a lot of that is to do with Kirsten Dunst just being a grandmaster, but part of that is also because Anne Rice just did such a spectacular job kind of negotiating all of that.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it also let her fix, like, doing the screenplay let her fix a lot of the things that were wrong in the book, and that,
mhm,
like, she
mhm.
probably heard a lot of feedback on, and, like,
Yeah.
had time to think about it because it came out, like, what, like, 20 years later or something?
Mhm.
So she was like, "All right, here's some edits. I totally would have written this originally, but it's fine," you know? And
This
I,
is
I
this
like
movie.
that.
This movie is not as gay as I wanted, but otherwise, doing all right.
Otherwise, yeah, yeah, I
Something.
like.
Something. I. Yeah. Please go. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was
Keep
just gonna say I
interrupting you.
like that. No, it's fine. It's fine. We're interrupting each other. It's fine.
I like that this is very much, and this is something I never really picked up before now, but it's very classic, this movie.
Hmm.
Um, there's a lot of like the way that the music works, for example, right? So Neil Jordan, I believe, is the person who directed it. I don't know what he's famous for, really, other than this. I don't know a ton about him as a director, but like I love the way that he kind of pieces this together, like almost like an old school, like Universal monsters movie, right? Like
Hmm.
Dracula, the Wolf Man, the Invisible Man, all that stuff, right? Those like older, like 30s and 40s classics,
Haven't seen
50s
any of them.
classics. there there's a lot of kind of vintage effects that he uses with
Hmm.
a very modern take on this story. So like for example, um when Claudia, goes and cuts her hair and she's like, "Ah, I'm going to cut it." And you hear like the scissors snip snip snip, right? And like the
Hmm.
sound effects are really great, right? The snip is like super duper loud because you like the director wants to communicate and the sound designer wants to communicate to you like the seriousness of this and the urgency that she's feeling. But there's this
Hmm.
beautiful music that's playing over the back with this beautiful kind of string section, like very high notes that are
Hmm.
coming in that are like that create a much more kind of visceral scene than another kind of music behind it would have done. And then when you hear her scream, there's like this crescendo of the music, right? Very very old school horror movie. And then there's like a flash to Louis, and it's like this scene where it's just like a bust of him. It's like the chest up, and he opens the door, and like the light kind of strikes him from the side. It's like so classic horror. Like it's so old school horror movie. Like it's very like
Hmm.
Nosferatu, like all of those old movies that are like considered like kind of the root of where a lot of our modern horror comes from. Like it's perfect. Like it's so well executed because it gives that kind of old school feel while giving you a new movie, right? The music is such a huge part of the vibe, the overall vibe of this, right? The transition, the night when Claudia and Lestat are hunting together and they go to that home with the whole family of people, right? And Lestat, like Louis is narrating, sometimes they would go hunting together, they would kill off an entire family, just the two of them, just the pair of them, right? And
Hmm.
Claudia kind of finishes playing her little normal song or whatever, her little musical piece, and then pivots into this other kind of darker song,
Hmm.
which I can't remember what the classical piece is called, but like it's based on vampirism, like it's based on vampires and the lore of vampires. So she starts kind of playing that, which is like as she's playing that, you see all the coffins being carried out of this house after everybody's
Yes.
dead. Like there's so many moments like that in this movie that are just so good, where like the use of light and the use of music and sound effect all kind of come together and create this like really kind of next level scene. Even when Louis is destroying, anytime Louis lights anything on fire, there's like really serious music, lots of kind of deep horns and stuff like that, kind of to like signal the fact that like something horrible is either happening or about to happen. Um,
Hmm.
it's something that I was really impressed with that I didn't really notice before in previous viewings. Um, just how classic they tried to make it, and it really does hold up in my opinion, even though it's so old.
So I looked up Neil Jordan to figure out what other things he's directed. The most recent thing that you
Mm-hmm.
might recognize is the movie Greta that
Okay.
Chloe Grace Moretz
Yeah.
Mortez. I don't know how you pronounce.
Mm-hmm.
That was the one that I recognized, but like mostly horror stuff. So Marlowe, which came out in 2022,
Mm-hmm.
um, The Company of Wolves, which came out in '84.
That's a good one.
It's Yeah, he directed that as well.
Hmm.
We've got Angel that came out in 82. Um,
So infrequent. He picks and chooses what he does.
this is, I was just writing the list of things that I've recognized. We're No Angels that came out in 89.
Hmm.
Mona Lisa that came out in 86. The Brave one that came out in 2007. Like, he's not putting stuff out every year for
Yeah.
sure. And
Yeah.
then a lot of like stuff that is not like doesn't have even an IMDb a DP picture.
Hmm.
IMDb.
Hmm.
Lots of Excalibur stuff though. We got Excalibur behind the movie, the making
Oh
of
wait,
Excalibur.
did he do Excalibur?
I'm guessing so, but it's not
Hold
on
on.
this list. Breakfast
Let's
on
see.
Pluto, if you recognize that.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. That's with Cillian Murphy.
We also got uh, Byzantium, Byzantium.
Oh, Byzantium. That's about
Yes,
vampires.
nice. That came out in 2012. He did that as well. The Crying Game that came in now out in 92.
Oh, that's a fantastic movie. That won a bunch of Academy Awards. It's
Yeah.
funny, the star of The Crying Game. So The Crying Game is about this woman and this man, and there's like some intrigue, but the woman is trans. It's
Hmm.
actually really very much ahead of its time. I'm sure there's tons of criticism. That's going to be like a whole other conversation. But the
Hmm.
star of that movie, the male star of that movie, is Stephen Ray, who actually plays Santiago in this movie. And in Interview with the Vampire, he's the actor who plays Santiago. He is the main character, one of the two main characters in that movie. And what's interesting about that is Stephen Ray actually isn't a big actor at all. He's a
Hmm.
film critic. He used to
Oh,
write film. Yeah, he used to critique films for my local newspaper actually in Philadelphia.
that's wild.
Yeah. Yeah, so, like, I didn't know that until after I had seen the movie. I was like, "Who is this guy?" And then I looked it up, and I was like, "Oh,
Hmm.
that guy. Why do I know his name?" And it's because, like, I love movies and books, obviously. Um,
Hmm.
and when I was a kid, I used to read, Premiere Magazine, and I'd read, like, the movie section every week in my newspaper and stuff like that, and I used to see his name all the time. Um yeah, so I looked up Excalibur. I don't think that Neil Jordan directed it. I think he was just like a consultant or something like that on that because it
Hmm.
was directed by John Borman. But
Okay.
if you like Arthurian lit, I know we've talked about Mists of Avalon and the Once and Future King and stuff. Reading those modern classics, um, Excalibur, in my opinion, is one of the best Arthurian movies ever made. It
Still
does
got
it
to
like
read
no one
Legend
else
Board.
can. Oh man, got to read that. It's on the list.
Yeah.
Um, got to get into it. But yeah, like I think that this person just did a really great job of directing this, and it makes sense that he picks a lot of horror movies. You can tell that his
Hmm.
influences come from like Hitchcock and come from those old like Universal Hollywood monster
Hmm.
kind of kind of method filmmaking. And it's something that like I think is so good. It makes for a very iconic kind of film, even when the movie is relatively new. Like it just kind
Hmm.
of levels up the game a little bit. Have you seen oh, what is it called? Werewolf by Night on Disney Plus. It's like a one shot horror Marvel story
No.
set in the MCU. Okay. So if you want to know what I mean, because I know you haven't really seen a lot of those older kind of like black and white horror movies, if you
Hmm.
want to know what I'm talking about a little bit better, watch that. It's like 45 minutes. It's like the length of of a TV show or something like that.
Okay.
It's with Gael Garcia Bernal, who is one of my favorite actors. He's lovely and very handsome. And basically, it's like it doesn't feel like a Marvel anything, really. It doesn't like
Okay.
it kind of tricks you, but it does have Marvel characters in it.
Okay.
And basically the idea is there is an annual or every 10 years or something like that, there's a hunt that happens with a secret group of monster hunters. And they all descend upon this one house where this guy kind of runs this event, and that guy is now dead. So this is like the first time that they're doing this without him, and it's all about trying to like capture or kill this creature that's like on the loose on their like in their estate. um and it's all black and white. It's brand new. I want to say it came out in the last year or two.
Okay.
It's all black and white and everything, but you'll see the influence because it's filmed to feel like one of those old school movies. So it's a good modern example of that for you without you having to go and dig up the old ones because I don't even know who's streaming those at this point.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
know at some point I really want to read Dracula and then
Hmm.
do a bunch of different Dracula movies, but
Yeah.
have not gotten to it yet.
Let me
Someday.
know. I'm not gonna lie to
Yeah,
you. It's a little bit of a snooze fest.
fair.
Um, it's a little
I
tired.
read part of it and then I gave up.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the hard
Understand.
part I ran into is the one I read has like a ton of footnotes. And I don't want
Oh
the
man,
footnotes. Yeah,
no, just read it and get it done with. So
that's
the
what I'm
copy that
saying.
I have a bunch of copies of it, honestly, because obsessed with vampires. I
Hmm.
have like a comic book version. I've got like a regular paperback version, and then I also have a really fancy hardcover version that's
Hmm.
illustrated by Greg Hildebrandt, who's like a famous fantasy illustrator. And it's absolutely stunning. It's a beautiful copy, and that helped me read it a lot because every like 10 pages you got a little fancy picture to look at, and so you
Mm.
can like reward yourself, you know what I mean? More books should do that, really. Like
Truly.
I never thought I'd get to a point in my life where I was like, can we have pictures and books please, cuz like that's dumb, right? But the reason I am campaigning for pictures and books is because it's like a nice way to break up your text,
Yeah.
especially for a heavier tome. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
again, Dracula is all just like letters. Like the whole
Yeah.
book is like people writing letters about their experiences, which sounds interesting until you get into it, and then you're like, man, this is just going on forever. It takes a really long time to get through it. Um, the good thing, though, is that Bram Stoker's Dracula by Francis Ford Coppola, I believe that's his 1992 movie, is
Hmm.
fantastic. So it is
Yeah.
more than worth it. It is more than worth it. That movie is so good. Like that's another one that like honestly like surprisingly holds up. Keanu Reeves was a worse actor back then and he was
Hmm.
just kind of a pretty face. So he's not his best. He's not like the greatest Jonathan Harker, but also Jonathan Harker is kind of boring. So he doesn't do a bad job. Um
Whatever works.
Whatever works. Get the asses in seats. Everyone in it is attractive. Literally every single person
Say
is like,
less.
I mean, it's really it's surprising. Even Anthony Hopkins is looking kind of good. You're like, wow,
Hmm.
good for you, Daddy. Congratulations.
Um. Okay. What else do we have with Interview with the Vampire before we get into Dracula?
Well, I mean, so we've
Uh.
got we meet Santiago. I feel
Hmm.
like they did a really great job buttoning up that scene, but keeping kind of the purpose behind it. Like Louis still calls him a buffoon.
Yeah.
A lot less petty catfighting drama between Santiago and Louis because the movie that's like one place where I was glad the movie was a little less gay because like I do not care about Louis and his beef with Santiago. Like Santiago is such a basic ass bitch, and I feel like we need a lot less of him in the book.
Hmm.
He taunts way too much. There's a lot of teasing and shit and a lot of like extra trash talk that he does in the book for like pages upon pages that I could have just used way less of.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that he and Louis like don't have an argument because there's nothing to argue about because like Louis and Armand aren't like in love, as in love
Yeah.
anyway. Um, the stage scene with the blonde girl, pretty
Mm.
well done. I found it interesting that they chose not to talk about the crone,
Yeah.
um, and do that whole like life and death kind of thing
Hmm.
comparison that they did in the book.
Yeah.
Instead, they kind of made it more like the like we talked about the Grand Goujonal. They kind of made it more like that, where it's like a story that's more about faith and religion and ends with death rather than it being
Hmm.
all about death. And I think that the way they kind of describe the vampires is good too. It's clear Anne Rice like let up a little bit because there's some ginger vampires in their mix. And
Hmm.
I was like, I thought you had to dye your hair black. What's this about?
Yeah. Truly.
So that wasn't terrible. I didn't really mind that.
I
I
do
do
feel
wish
bad.
they'd spent more time with like Armand and Louis though. They give them like no time
Yeah.
whatsoever.
I feel bad too. Also, I didn't love the guy that cast as Santiago. He wasn't my headcanon for Santiago.
Agree. He
Yeah.
doesn't feel in my mind Santiago is like
Young, hot,
yeah, yeah, really hot.
toy toy energy, you know?
Yes. Yes. Uh and like I said, Stephen Ray is not known for that. He is a regular man.
Hmm.
He's definitely got the tricksiness down though, like the tricksy
Yeah.
vibe, like the fuck you attitude is there.
Hmm.
Um but I agree. I felt like he was going to be a little prettier. He's prettier in the book. I like that they say less about the young man, the boy
Yeah.
that serves Armand.
And he
He's
didn't
still
die,
there.
but he doesn't
Right.
die at the
He
end.
doesn't die, and he's still around. You see him. Louis does feed off of him, but it's
Mhm.
not as explicit. There's not all that like weird 14-year
Yeah.
old erection stuff that you have to deal with. Um
Louis
I
trying to find a
really
spot to
do.
bite was pretty good though.
Yes, I did like that because it shows that that's just what he does. Um I did I do like Antonio Banderas as Armand.
Me
Um
too. I don't know
I
why.
actually, yeah, I actually really enjoyed him as Armand, and I feel like he could have had more time. It's funny though because I was talking to my partner about this last night. I think the reason that we don't get more time with Armand
Mhm.
is because he was physically exactly what they wanted. But in
Mhm.
1994, Antonio Banderas had been in like a handful of English movies. Like he had been working with Pedro Almodovar, who is a famous Spanish director who's fantastic. If you're ever looking for
Mhm.
international cinema, he's so good.
Mhm.
I love pretty much everything he's ever done. But Antonio Banderas, he was with Almodovar for a long time. They made like 3, 4, 5 movies together before he came to
Mhm.
America and tried to apply his trade here. He had done Desperado and all of those other movies with Robert Rodriguez because Robert
Mhm.
Rodriguez is a Hispanic filmmaker who had seen him in the Almodovar stuff. So he was kind of new, like new to the market in America with
Free
American
Spy
cinema
Kids.
pre Spy Kids. So his accent, he had to work on his accent, like he had to work on
Mhm.
his English. So I wonder if that's why, because when you hear him deliver his lines, he has a much stronger accent than he has now. Like
Mhm.
even now, he still retains an accent. It's clear English is not his first language, but like
Mhm.
his accent now is much more mellow than it was back then. And I
The way
think
he says
that
Santiago, chef's
yes,
kiss. Oh,
yes,
so good.
beautiful, beautiful, and his hair looks wonderful too. He
Oh,
looks
it
great with that
does.
hair. Oh my
So
word.
long and
Oh yes,
beautiful,
yes.
very moisturized.
Oh yes, he is in his lane. He is thriving.
Mhm.
Yeah, I definitely wish there was more time. I do like though that like this is like the Lemonade album for Louis. Okay,
Mhm.
like he like looks at fucking like he looks at Armand in his face and is like, "I know it was you."
Yeah,
Armand is like, "What
literally.
was me? What do you mean
Me?
was me? What?" And Louis is like, "I know it was you. I know you killed her. You want me to be here and restore your vitality. I will not do it." I'm like, man, look at this. Deer
Mhm.
and Rice. You see how you just summed up 45 pages
Yep.
of exposition in one conversation, and then Louis walks out into the street and moves back to New Orleans by himself?
Mhm.
That was always an option for you. That
Truly.
was always that was always an option. You did not need 45 to 60 pages. You
Yeah.
didn't need a tower that he was climbing up in the night. You didn't need any of that, okay? Like you didn't
Mhm.
need Louis going, "But where's Armand?" You didn't need any of that, right? And
Yeah.
it was still just as effective. Could they have taken their time a little bit more? Yes. If that movie had been 3 hours, I would not have been mad at anybody involved. I'd
Same.
been fine with it. I could have lived longer in that universe, right? Like even down to the end, like I loved that they tried to kind of make it more modern, showing Louis kind of going to the cinema. In the book, they just talk about how like Louis is annoyed that he has to follow that young vampire to the cinema and stuff, and he's like, "Ugh, I don't even care about any of this stuff." Like, I like the levity and the lightness that they kind of added to both Lestat and Louis. Like, both of them are such bummers in the book. Like, they're such drags, both of them. Like, they are insufferable at some points.
Mhm.
But I think in the movie, they definitely soften that up quite a bit. Like watching Louis' eyes widen as he's seeing color for the first time. You know, he goes from black and white to color film.
Yeah.
Seeing that scene of like, Christopher Reeve as Superman flying around the earth, right? Like those little callback moments, those little bits and pieces that pull you in, I thought were a really nice touch.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's this movie is so well done. I'm
Yeah.
not mad at anything, honestly.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. Oh, also getting to see Claudia's death.
Yes.
Oh my
Brutal.
god.
Brutal. Like,
Truly.
oh, like it's like a gut punch, especially like And again, I'm talking like camera angles. Like Neil Jordan did a great job with those camera angles because like you
Mhm,
see them and it's beautiful. Honestly, it looks like a little like stone statue of a mother
mhm,
holding her child until he walks up and touches it and it crumbles to ash, and you're just like,
mhm.
fuck. Like when he walks in, he flings his arms back. He flings his arms in front of his face. He can't look at it. Like it's a visceral. Like such a gut punch. Like you're like, oh, Louis, I'm so sorry, buddy. She was getting better. She was getting
Yeah,
better.
I know, and it looks like it was designed for that too, which
Yes.
I think is even more gut-wrenching because it's like that also means that they're not the first people to fall victim to the sun like that,
Mm-hmm.
which is wild. Absolutely wild.
Now you understand why I always see a little circular room when I read the book.
Mhm.
Cause like that room looks like it's expressly designed to do that, right? Like
Mhm.
that's what that room is for, right? It's a room. I'm sure it was probably originally just like a cell so that the person inside could get some sun. But like these vampires are using it as a punishment chamber, right? It's like a torture
Mhm.
chamber. Because like even spending time in there as the sun kind of comes out and starts to like creep up over the clouds, right? Like I can only imagine the torture that must
Yeah.
wreak on a vampire, right? Like it's obviously a punishment room. Um and yeah, seeing the two of them just huddled there, like it's so sad. Same thing with Madeleine though. I could have used more time with Madeleine.
Mhm.
Like there's like a three
Same
second
night.
conversation. Yeah, all in one night.
Yeah.
I'm a vampire now and now I'm not, right? Like
Mhm.
poor thing. Poor thing. I like
That's oh,
I
sorry.
like how Louis sees Lestat at the end too. I
Yep.
feel like that whole scene where Louis goes to the house and Lestat's in there and he's like, "Oh my god, you came back to me, Louis. Look at you. You look so handsome." I feel like it's that moment that everybody hopes they're going to get with their ex where
Mhm.
like you're out one day, you happen to look fine as hell, you go to Whole
Mhm.
Foods, you're like ready to get you and, get yourself like a little, treat, some self-care,
Yep.
right? You're like, "Oh, everything's going to be so good. I'm having a great time. I am living my best life and I'm just going to get this bottle of wine. I'm going to buy the expensive wine tonight too for
Mhm.
me. I'm going to buy myself a prime rib for me. I am doing it. Tonight is going to
Mhm.
be a great night." And then, like, you bump your cart into your ex and they're in sweatpants and they've got a band aid on their face and they look like
Mhm.
trash. And you're like, "Oh, look at you." Or maybe they're there with their like new loudmouth partner and they're terrible and they're fighting. And you're like, "Oh, did I happen upon something bad?" Ooh. Like, Louis is there, like, "Listen, sweetie,
Yeah.
it was nice catching up. I'm going to go. You seem to really want me back. I'm not coming back because I am thriving now. I'm doing other things. I have moved on. And I suggest you do the same, really. It didn't work out for a reason, babe. Okay? Kisses. Bye." Like, that's exactly what that whole scene is for me. Is
All
Louis
I'm
like,
imagining is Louis with like a Birkin bag holding
"Yes,
it in his hands, and he's like, "Oh, I can't even set it anywhere. Like, there's no clean table space. I'm gonna
no."
go.
Yeah, it's time.
You,
It's time.
yeah, it's time.
Lestat's
We're
like,
done.
"It's been 20 minutes." Louis like, "That is more than enough for me, honestly. Um,
Yeah,
I'm starting to
and it,
smell like the stink of your rotting apartment, so I'm gonna go."
yeah, I'm gonna go. Have a good life. Hope I never see you again. All right, bye.
Delete my number.
Yeah. Oh, it's like when you're like, have you ever like this has only ever happened to friends, but like when they get a text from an unknown number and it's like, "I miss you," and you're like, "Who?"
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Lestat's like, "Louis, I made you. We spent 150 years together." Louis like, "Oh, that Lestat. Sorry, I
Oh,
know a lot of people.
yeah.
I'm really popular. I can't help that I'm so popular. I don't know what you want me to do."
hmm And then Louis telling the interview boy, he's like, "Yeah, so then I don't know what happened to Lestat. I'm assuming he's dead." And the scene at the end where we
Oh my
get
god.
Lestat just jumping in this dude's convertible,
Yep, yep,
drinking in
yep,
his blood, and
yep.
then he's like taking over driving. Like, what?
He looks at her and he's like, "Don't worry, baby." And he gives his signature line, "I'm going to give you the chance I had never had." And Christian Slater's like, "I'm dead. I'm dying. Someone help me." I'm like, "You asked for this." You look Louis
Literally.
right in his fucking face. Louis like, "So that was last Thursday. It was terrible. And yeah, now I'm talking to you." And the first thing Christian Slater says is, "Well, I mean, well, obviously you should make me a vampire now."
hmm
Louis
hmm
is like, "No patience for this. None."
Yeah.
Yeah, man, like I really enjoyed the way that it ended. I think the book ends in a very mysterious way. Like,
Mhm.
the book ends with the boy like making sure that he has his recorder, like all his tapes done, right? He has like all his shit, correct.
Mhm.
And then he's like he like writes down the address where he thinks Lestat's house is. This is far less ominous, like, and
Yeah.
far more obvious, but like
Mhm.
down to him turning on, Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones, right? Which is like all
So
about
good.
like feeling bad for Satan, right? Like
Yep.
like he like drives off into the night or whatever. And in my head, like they planned on doing a sequel. Like there was a whole talk about it. They were trying to figure out how to like even bring Louis back. They were like, it's not really about Louis, it's really just about Lestat, like the next book. But maybe there's like a scene where they reunite. Maybe there's a scene where they talk again, right? Like whatever.
Mhm.
Um but it just like never came to fruition. Like it was just never greenlit. Like they could never make it work. Yeah, but they did talk about a sequel. Like it was in production
It
for a
would have been
minute.
so good.
It would have been great, but like I get it. When you see Queen of the Damned, you're gonna be like, no wonder people are disappointed. Um,
Yeah.
so Queen of the Damned, just to prepare you and
Okay.
anyone who is listening that might be interested, there's some things you need to know. Number
Okay.
one, Anne Rice was not involved at all.
Okay.
Number two, it combines like 2 to 3 books in this series.
Mm.
It's not just the book Queen of the Damned adapted as a movie. Like Interview with the Vampire is a book that's adapted to a movie. It's more of like they took a bunch of pieces, mushed it together, and made a story. Um,
Hmm.
number three.
Okay.
The timeline is gonna throw you for a loop. You're gonna be like, I don't understand. This book was published in the 70s. Interview with the Vampire was published in the 70s, but then suddenly we're in the 2000s for some reason, and Lestat has been
Mm.
asleep for a really long time for some reason, and what happened to him after he left like Louis' apartment. Just forget everything you know about Interview with the Vampire completely. Just throw it all in the
Okay.
garbage, and then watch Queen of the Damned, because you
Okay.
can't be like, Tom Cruise is in this movie. He's not.
Same.
And the version of Lestat you're getting is not Tom Cruise. Another thing to know,
Mhm.
if you enjoyed Hot Topic during the 2000s, you will
Mhm.
like this movie a lot more than if you didn't enjoy Hot Topic during the 2000s. Um, it is a very Hot Topic feeling movie. There are a lot
Okay.
of people who are dressed like they shop exclusively at Hot Topic. Uh, there is some horrible acting. It's clear where they spent their money, the
Mm.
people that they spent money on. If you've ever seen The Mighty Ducks, the girl from the team is in it. She's all grown up. She plays Lestat's love interest and like this journalist or whatever. She's not a journalist. I guess she's an anthropologist, because she does like an art history anthropologist, because she does like
Mhm.
restoration on paintings and things like that. Like she studies. So the guy that she works for is in this group called the Talamasca, which is kind of like a secret network, almost like the Watchers Council in Buffy.
Okay.
um like the Talamasca actually exist across all of Anne Rice's books, I'm pretty sure. Like I think the Witching Hour and stuff like that all has Talamasca in it as well. But basically they're a council of people who know about the darker side of the world and the
Mhm.
monsters that like live among us, and like try to keep them in check and try to like document what's happening, so that there's always a record of this essentially happening. And
Okay.
I feel like they come from like an ancient tribe in the books. There's like a group that's always kind of performed this role. um Another thing to know,
Mhm.
the music is all composed by Jonathan Davis, the lead singer of Korn. um
Okay.
Now, I know what you're thinking. Candace, that sounds atrocious.
Okay.
And you know what? On paper, you would be right. But in practice, the music is quite frankly one of the best parts of the entire movie. It makes so much sense. There's a Jonathan Davis cameo in it. He plays like some ticket scalper that's trying to pick up a lady on the street.
All right.
The voice of Lestat. So Lestat starts a band. Lestat wakes up from his slumber
Okay.
because he hears some fucking trash punk metal kids playing some very ridiculous 2000s industrial, and is like, this is great. And the way he enters the scene is comical at best. It's super embarrassing. He's like, this Lestat is dark haired as well, which you're not going to be prepared for. And
Mm.
he's like on top of like this piano or on top of like some speakers or something, and he like opens his mouth to sing, but the way the actor does it is very embarrassing. And it's hilarious unintentionally. And the group of people that are in his band are horrible actors. One guy is like, "Hey, what are you doing, man?" Like it's really bad. It's
Oh
terrible.
god.
Um, it's clear that they just like found some people on the street in LA and were like, "Do you want to be in a movie?" And they were like, "Yeah, sure, cool." like righteous dude. And yeah, so basically Lestat becomes a rock star.
Okay.
His whole gimmick is that he's a vampire. And so
Okay.
other vampires are like, can you not right now, please? So he's just still as annoying as regular Lestat, right? He's
Hmm.
still an edgelord who like can't get enough of himself and wants to just ruin everybody's life, right? And make sure no one is having a good time except for him. You meet his maker, Marius
Okay.
comes, and you meet him for a while. They have a
Hmm.
relationship and some conversation. Marius is a great actor, Vincent Perez. He does a really good job. He's very handsome.
Hmm.
Um, he meets this Jessie girl who's like trying to figure out. So Jessie basically is the girl who works for the Talamasca. She's figuring out like what Lestat has to do with all of this because there's again, they study the occult. So like Marius is a painter. So they found all these pieces of artwork that have the same face in it, and that's how they're tracking him. And then like Lestat, there's like some poems and things like that that have been written about Lestat over time and over centuries, and diaries they found and writings and stuff. So that's how they're kind of piecing together who everyone is and what they're doing.
Hmm.
So Jesse is like the first person that's like, I think Lestat is alive and I think he's doing X, Y, and Z. And people are like, no one has heard from this Lestat person forever. Sometimes vampires just die, let it go. But she's like
Yeah.
convinced that Lestat exists. Um, the most important thing to know about this movie, and the reason that you should sit through all of it, is
Hmm.
because it is the last movie Aaliyah ever did. I know that we talked about Aaliyah last time, and discussed who she is and why she was important. Um, it's the last movie she ever did before she died, and she looks absolutely stunning. Like you will never see a more beautiful black vampire in your life, I don't think.
Hmm.
And that
Fair.
includes Wesley Snipes, and Sanaa Lathan, which is like Blade is a hard movie to beat. It's really good. But
I've been told I need to see Blade. I've never seen it.
you have not seen Blade?
No.
Oh no. Oh no, Rachel, what is happening? What is happening right now, Rachel? Rachel, like you know,
When are we having the Candace teaches Rachel pop culture podcast?
I
Because
mean, it needs to happen right away apparently because I mean, I don't even know what we're doing here right now. Like
I listen. I'm pitching an idea to you. Your podcast is Let's Talk Vampires, and then you can just show me all the vampire movies. I'm just throwing
I
it
mean,
out.
that's honestly a good limited series because there's not too many of them that you have to see. There are a lot of vampire movies
Mhm.
out there that are absolutely horrible, and I would never put you through that. Um, but I will make a list of the things that you should watch so that you understand vampire culture more because this is a shame. Um, although I kind of just want to show you like all old movies, like that needs to be like the
I'm
podcast
not
is like
opposed to old movies. I'm not going to lie to you.
I
I
take little baby zoomers and I go, hey guys, we're gonna watch some old stuff today. This movie is called Labyrinth. It stars David Bowie, who was a rock star. Have
see.
you seen that?
I've seen parts. I haven't seen the whole thing. My siblings watched it, and I was working.
Rachel, you darling creature. You sweet baby angel. I love you
All
so
I've
much, and that is
seen,
why I'm not going to be mad.
I've seen the part where he's like, "Power of voodoo, hoodoo, you do what? Remind me of the babe." That's all I
Yes,
remember.
yes, you've seen
I've
Magic
seen
Dance.
Gremlins.
Gremlins, the movie,
Yes.
or the goblins in that movie? Because there are
Yes.
goblins.
I've seen
Yes to
Gremlins the
both.
movie. Yes to
Okay.
both.
All right. So Gremlins the movie is terrifying. I
Yes.
actually didn't watch all of Gremlins until like 2 years ago because I was terrified as a child. I had a very
Mhm.
bad experience one day with that movie, and I was like, nope, never again. Have you seen Gremlins 2, where there's a sexy lady gremlin?
No.
Oh, hold on to your butt. You're gonna want to take a look at that. You're gonna want to hold out for sexy gremlin lady. You're
Oh my
definitely gonna want
god.
to see that. She's spectacular. Yeah, you're not really missing too much. It's good. It's not like you should see it so that you know about pop culture and you understand things, but you
Hmm.
won't die if you don't see Gremlins 2. If you don't see Blade though, you will die. Blade heavily informs Queen of the Damned. Heavily.
Okay.
The first 10 minutes of Blade, there is a scene where they're like in Russia or somewhere and someone dies, I think. And then like they're driving through these streets. No, I'm wrong. That's Blade 2. So in the movie Blade, in the first scene, you see Tracy Lords, who
Hmm.
you probably don't know who Tracy Lords is either. Do
I
you know who
don't
John
know.
Waters is?
No, none of these names
Oh,
ring a bell to me.
all right, listen. How do I explain this to you? Okay, so Tracy Lords was a girl who ran away from home when she was a teenager and got into the porn industry.
Blade came
But
out
she
the year I was born.
okay, we're gonna set that aside for a second, um, because I went to go see that in the movies. My mom bought me and my friend a ticket, and it was the first movie I ever got to see by myself in the movie theater. So Tracy Lords is an actor now.
Okay.
Back then, like when she was young, she ran away from home, got involved in porn to try to pay the bills, but she was only like 16. She was like 15, 16 years old. So
Okay.
nobody knew that. She had fake documentation, fake paperwork, and nobody really checked it because like back then it was just like, come on in, we'll just do some stuff. So there was a bunch of movies with Tracy Lords that's now child pornography and you cannot find anywhere because like she was a child, she was underage. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason that porn has the restrictions it has now is partially because of her. Like
Mm-hmm.
the reason there's like, consent checks and paperwork to sign and, documenting and, STD checks and all that stuff. Part of that, like the porn reform was because
Mm-hmm.
of Tracy Lords and what happened to her in the industry. She was taken advantage of. And like,
Mm-hmm.
granted, she knew what she was doing kind of, but you're a kid, you don't know how to consent.
Was she a
So
figurehead to that, or was it because of all that she was able to get into?
it's all
Okay.
that she was able to get. Like she had an extensive career. Like it was fucked up. Like when it all came
Okay.
out, people were like, "What?" Because you have to be 18 to be in an adult movie. So I
Mm-hmm.
think for 3 years she was in the film industry doing work, and people just assumed she was older. They just accepted that she was older and didn't really think about it because she looked older.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so she came off of rehab. She like rehabilitated for a while after that. Obviously, very traumatic experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she kind of had to grow up and realize she didn't have agency because for a long time she was kind of defending it like, oh well, I chose to be there, but at the same time she didn't
Yeah.
realize these people should have looked out for her, you know what I'm saying? So she went through rehabilitation, became an actor. John Waters is a campy queer director. He's done a lot of 70s movies. The musical Hairspray is his creation. He did
Mm-hmm.
the original movie from the 80s. He's definitely a living legend and an icon. The reason I bring him up is because he also has used Tracy Lords in his movies. Like she's done a lot of like kind of B movies and more kind of cult classic stuff since
Mm-hmm.
she's not been an adult star. Um, but the movie opens, Blade opens with her in a convertible top down with this very straight laced guy next to her. She has like Betty Page bangs, very sexy haircut, looks goth as fuck, right? Like looks just edgy and very hardcore. And the guy's like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, I'm really excited to go," and she's like, "You're being a real square." And they get to the party, and everyone in there, it's like an industrial like goth rave, and
Okay.
everybody there looks super cool. They all have really awesome outfits on. Um, and I'm sure you've probably seen footage of people like dancing in blood, like blood is raining on them and they're dancing. Have you seen any gifs of that ever or videos of
All I've
that?
seen is the Carrie one.
Okay, no.
All
So in
right.
Blade, it's like a bunch of vampires in a room and they're having a party.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that they do is like when things get like really hyped, like the sprinkler system goes off and it's all blood, like it's all like human blood. So everyone's covered in blood and dancing. It's very
Wild.
it's great. I'm not gonna lie to you. If you like vampire
Yeah.
stuff, it's definitely the movie to watch.
Okay.
Wesley Snipes is fantastic as Blade. He's a man of few words. The
Mm-hmm.
villain Deacon Frost is A plus. He's top notch. Played by Steven Dorff. Like you cannot go wrong with that movie. To be honest with you, it totally holds up. Blade 2, iffy. Blade 3, awful.
Okay.
Blade 2 is actually, I'm pretty sure that's Guillermo del Toro that directs that movie. Uh, Big name. So
Yeah.
Pan's Labyrinth, Guillermo del Toro, like
Yeah.
Cabinet of Curiosities, he directs the second movie.
All
It was
right.
like one of his early movies. Yeah, it's bizarre. But Queen of the Damned is very heavily informed by that because both of them feel very like Hot Topic generation. They both feel very
Okay.
like mall goth kind of,
The
platform
person I
boots.
wanted to be, but was not allowed to be, basically.
Correct. Vegan leather. Yeah. So watch both of those movies and
Okay.
live your fanciest, wildest teen life. I was a teenager at that time, and I'm not gonna lie, it was great. I was not old enough to go and do all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't old enough. I was only old enough to watch it. And even that, I was barely old enough to watch it. I had to do a lot of heavy negotiating. I saw Queen of the Damned in the movie theater with my mother because I was not old enough to see it by myself. So like know going in that you are
Mm-hmm.
here to have fun.
Okay.
You are here to have fun. You are not here to do a fancy analysis of a book that somebody wrote. You are here to enjoy yourself and
Mm-hmm.
smile. That's
I'm
it.
excited for our probably 20-minute Patreon special review of that episode.
Oh man, you're really it's wild. It's
Amazing.
wild. You won't be disappointed. If you guys are interested in hearing more, dear listeners, please definitely peep Rachel's Patreon. It's going to be a Patreon exclusive, and we're basically going to roast the hell out of this movie, but also probably talk about how low key good it is for some reason.
Yep.
Um,
It's gonna be great.
it is.
Candace, where can the people of the internet find you and the stuff you do?
You can find me at that Candace girl, Candace, over on Twitter, at Candace the Magnificent everywhere else, including Twitch, YouTube, and Instagram. I am also in a podcast over on 12 Sided Stories called Bookhound Bounty Hunter, so shout out to them. Please check it out. If you like TTRPGs like Dungeons and Dragons and Savage Worlds, I do a whole heck of a lot of that. So take a look at my Twitter and follow me for more.
Yeah, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Yay! Bye!